we can see, but we are with Jonathan's Tuxedo, made in Mexico Fender. This is with the old Katana with the master volume turned right up, and bringing the volumes up on the other gain and the normal volume. I don't actually know whether that makes it any better, but I'll have to do some more trying out. But this is what Stuart recommended me to do, and since I haven't been really falling much in love with the Katana, I thought I'd give it a go anyway. This is pretty nice. It's got a mixture of strings on it. I think it's got quite a heavy G baby. I'm sort of liking that approach. Now let's see if it gets better with the crunch on that setting. Sound, it's not hurting my ears the way it does the other way around. brown thing does. I wonder if Dave Gilmour pulls that face. Right, well, I think that's actually not bad. I'm quite impressed with the now. Let's see if I turn that down and the other one's up. It sort of warms it up a bit. Got quite low frets. Little bit of zizzing. And a little bit of fret slap, which is all very cool. So that's not bad. So we don't have the overhead camera today, so we're just working on the one camera view, I'm afraid, so apologies. There we are. So classic looks, black and white, Fender MIM Strat, and going to, the nut is pretty good on here, pleased to say. A little bit worn, a little bit of wear down here on these frets, so we may be able to get rid of some of that. Yeah, the neck alignment a little bit off, but not too bad. We'll tweak that. Could do with cleaning the bridge, so we might take the bridge apart and give it all a good clean up. Make sure everything, jack socket's loose, things like that. We'll take care of all of those, and we'll give it a gentle leveling to clear up the fret slap. Okay, so first things to do, let's set about this nut, which is probably a bone one by the looks of it, or a micarta I think they use on these. So let's do the old remove that. Now this is going to have, by the way, this is going to have the tremolo flat down, so we're not going to have any tremolo work. Now I never understood this. So here we have ye olde made in Mexico Strat. This is a Fender Stratocaster, and yet it has a puny zinc alloy bridge block. I don't understand why. It really doesn't make sense. So I'll show you. Ew, that's interesting. Little bits and quality control thingies, but look at that. So there we are. That's your, that could be fairly cheap from anywhere. It's not exactly weighty, and it's not exactly confidence inspiring. I mean, I'm sure it does its job, no problem, but why not have a decent sized block in there? Honestly, what is wrong with you, Fender? Well, the first time I saw that, I assumed that somebody had messed around and put one one of those in place, because I couldn't believe that a full strength Fender would ship out with one of those in it. You know, if you pay them, I don't know how much, 400 odd quid or something, why doesn't it have a decent bridge block in there? Not good, not impressed. So also the same thing applies with this little string tree, little pingy grotty string tree, which we will get rid of right now because it's history. So that goes off there, and what I'll also have a quick look for is something to widen wherever it's gone, to widen the hole up very slightly. I do this every time. This one single thing, what's the word I'm looking for? Drill bit should be put in one place and bleeding well left there, and I never managed to do it. So I'm always wasting time looking for it. Your time, my time, everyone's time. And eventually I will find it, but probably, there it is, chunky. Right, let me get the drill. So, all in all, just another made in Mexico Strat in the wall. So just enlarging the hole slightly because the Tusq string tree hole is a little bigger. No, the screw is a little bigger, and so we don't want to split the wood or run any risk of splitting the wood when we fit the string tree of Tuskness. There we are. So I'm going black with this because mainly that is the only ones I've got at the moment. I've got 9.5 inch radius black Tusq nut. Now I've made one adjustable already, so I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to have a gentle pull on this one to see how it's been fitted and whether it's going to play ball. These are usually very beautifully fitted right down to the right size, so I'm just going to give it a little gentle pull and see if it will play ball with me. And it doesn't look like it, so I will get the old drilling thing. Now the other thing I've got to keep an eye on these is the finish, and it gets me very nervous. As soon as I see a maple Fender fingerboard I get nervous, because in the past I've had a couple mainly Fenders and mainly USA, I think Fenders probably, but maple boards that have shed their finish at the drop of a hat. This is a bit knackered, this. Now it doesn't want to come out. End up taking the whole thing out and having to pull it out. Yeah, so the what was I going to say? Oh yeah, the material. It seemed like there was a batch or some batches that just basically didn't want to stick to the wood, and as a result they came right off. God, this thing doesn't want to come off. Yeah, so you could you'd be putting some sandpaper on there, not sandpaper, masking tape on there to polish out the frets, and lo and behold, you'd take it off at the end and the damn stuff would come out. So this is really, it doesn't want to come out. I don't like this at all. This is going to have to go in the bin at some point. So we've now got a mandrel thing that just will not play. Trouble with Dremels is you can't afford to lose them. So I'm going to have to put this in a vise, take this bit off first. Always something to slow me down. Something gonna slow me down, oh yes. finally that just dropped out. So it does it as and when, if it feels like it. Thank you. Well, that drum is going in the bin with its mandrel thing. Is that what the word is? You know, the stalk thing. Because that ain't no good. Right, so we're going to carefully remove this. Well, this goes in the bin. Because it's history. It's a history. Okay. Here we go. Now these, I don't want to move. So it is a Sunday, and by the way, if the finish is going to come off, we'll find out pretty much now when I use that frog tape. Yeah, so it's a Sunday, and it's been a nice day all day. Thanks, man. No, that isn't working properly either. It's got no bite. Of course, it's spinning. Beautiful Sunday. I'm not sure the nice weather's going to stick around for very long, so I have a feeling it's going to get... You know, that's threaded, and that doesn't even work. So this one can go in the bin shortly. I'll keep it just for the blade part, the wheel, and I'll use a more reliable one that I've been using. It's the problem with these things, they're such fiddly little tools that they don't last very long. So we see where we've got to. It's quite a way to go yet. And you sort of have to play it by feel, because there's no real way of telling you when you've reached the bottom. You can usually tell because it changes the way the wheel feels, man. So then you can sort of squeeze it in like that and pull it out. Very nice. There we go. So that is, I think, micarta. It's a sort of plastic that makes dust in a bit of kind of bone-like dust, but it's not stinky like bone. Now, some people will say, well, it's a perfectly good nut material. Why are you changing it? I always change it if I have a chance to, and customers are happy for me to, because we go and change it out for Tusq XL, which is Tusq with the additional, what do they call that stuff? Teflon or PTFE component. So we're definitely going for a pre-lubricated, ready lubricated material. So here we have our replacement nut, which is at the moment, first of all, it's a little bit too wide. So the first thing we're going to do is let's bring up the good board. Throw away my carter bits. Yeah, it's been an amazing run of guitars, thanks to Jonathan. I've just done nothing but his guitars for the last few days. And you know, I've basically had one on every day since Wednesday or something. But I've got a few others I've also got to get to, so that's going to be good to finish this one today. Tomorrow I've got Thomas Blug for Rob, who's a local guy, and he's going to learn to play the guitar, or play the electric guitar on that guitar. That's the plan. And then he's suffering from brain cancer at the moment, and he doesn't have too long left. So when his time's up, he'll be... I need to take the little notchy bit off. yeah, when he's no longer with us, he's going to pass the guitar on to his son, who will play it later this year at Glastonbury, which is a fab thing to imagine happening. So that's Monday, and then Tuesday I've got finishing touches to put onto or finish the setup or the refret and setup of Mark's Yamaha SG200. That's the one. Okay, so this is a curved slot, so I'm going to very gently move my hand out of the way. Very gently wear off this little thing, whatever it's called, the little leg. Pretty close. Yeah, and then I've got a few other things kind of to get into during the week and so on and so forth. So lots to do. Okay, let's have a sort of feel of this sitting there. That sits nicely. Now we're going to want to go, we're going to thin this down. Now, the difficulty of thinning down a nut for a curved slot is that you have to use a special tool for it, and thankfully, thanks to Bob, I have these test tools of some things he made. Now this is a 9.5. I'm just going to double check the radius because I have to be obviously completely sure. 9.5 it is. So I've got a 9.5 radius. I don't know what you can see anymore. Where have we gone? Oh, help, sorry. So what I'm aiming to do here is I need to reduce this down because we don't need it to be anywhere near as chunky. So I can do it underneath here, but it's quite a slow process, I have to say. Now the reason I'm doing this, another obvious way, maybe obvious way to do it, is to basically fit the nut and then cut the slots down into it until you reach the target height. But the problem with doing that is you end up doing what I'm trying to avoid doing, which is cutting into the nut slots. So this could be a fairly lengthy process, or we could do a bit of crude extra cutting. So let me just make a sharp pencil lead to begin with, and if we can make a measurement and cut off or sand off some bulk material and then fine tune it with that tool, that block, Bob's block, radius block. The problem is we don't immediately know how much too high it is. A quick way of telling is to, let's take this frog tape off. A quick way of telling is to put in, sorry, terrible camera work. Somebody pointed that out today. So they're a wizard at doing the guitars, but your camera work's rubbish. And I thought, well, if it was only true and it was that way around, I'd be happy. Right, so what I'll do, just to get a sense of it, we'll put the nut in and it's right down on its curve, and I can sort of get a feel. Now, what I'm aiming to do with this is when I use an adjustable nut, I really want the nut to leave the strings on the first fret. So I want the nut to sit far enough in that the strings just sit on the first fret and touch it, because the idea would be then we dial up the nut to the desired first fret action, which should only be a tiny bit above those above the first fret. So right now what I can do is I can just check that things sitting in there snugly, which it is. Now if I measure we'll get a pretty good approximation of the height. I can tell how much I've got a height above the first fret it currently is. I can sort of assess, work out how much I need to take off to get it to sit flat, and it's going to be 0.4 at least. I imagine it's going to be more than 0.5. Let's try 0.7. Yeah, 0.7, not far off. Yeah, so 0.7, so it's nearly a millimetre. So even if we took a millimetre, we can still bring it up to the right height. So we can afford to go a little bit over. So let's start by doing drawing out a millimetre on the nut. Let's see if I can work towards it. So out comes the nut, round comes the camera to where you can see it amazingly. Now, one way of doing this, if we put that there, we can say how much have we got to take off. So let's get our 9.5 radius, which is this, and let us imagine, you say imagine, oops, there goes my pencil. Let's draw a millimetre on there. You might say to me, how do you know that's a millimetre? And I have but guessed with my spidey senses, and I go and measure it and I find myself the millimetre mark. And I look at this and I go, actually, that's 0.5 millimetre. So let's not waste, let's not make this job longer than it has to be. So if I place my radius down again, and I will draw some more on it and mark it off such. And I reckon that will be very close to a millimetre now. We can double check. That's fractionally over. But the good thing now is I could basically bring this to a spinning thing and work myself most of that material off. So if we get this again, this thing, spinny thing, and we spin it, and I can hold it against here like so, and with a decent grip I can bring this to there. So not, not precision or anything, but just probably enough to get rid of a fair amount, and then I'll use Bob's sanding block to tidy up the rest. In the meantime, I can hold this end here and do a little bit of that to get the ends down. Okay. Okay, so there's a load of dust flying everywhere. Now I've already made the the drilled tapped holes in the nut, so it's ready to it's ready just to be have the screws put in. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to try, you can't see very well, try to use the radius here gently to smooth out the ragged sort of bits on the underside, and with a bit of patience we should eventually end up with a fairly smooth underside. Of course it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, because basically we are going to lift it up on legs, little stilts anyway, so as long as we get it pretty good. So I'm looking at how it's standing up there, and so I could say a bit slow, and I think we're working on 240 grit sandpaper in here, so it's not the most hungriest sandpaper in the world, but I think we're sort of almost there. I can see it's still not quite getting to the right place, but we put it in there, and that will now sit too low, but that's the whole point, because we want to bring it up with the grub screws. So I'm going to check, sorry if you can't see this, I'm just checking its shape. It's quite hard to keep it pointing in, or leaning back in the way you want it to go, so I might do a bit of half and half so I can lean it back. So it's still working onto the same shape, although I'm only doing half of it at a time. And then when I'm happy with that, I'll switch over to this side and do a bit more on this side, and then sort of join them both up like so. That's I mean, it's not quite perfect, but it's not too far off. Maybe a little tiny bit overcut there. Now, when I bring up the thingy, and try and place this test. It doesn't want to go, but put it in here like this. Now it's a little bit tight at the moment, and that's probably just means I need to sand fraction thinner. It's got wider near the top, which is quite a common thing to happen. So I'll just take a little bit of thickness off there. The interesting thing is when you end up making these adjustable nuts like this, they end up being incredibly small. There's hardly anything to them. And actually, particularly with these Fenders, the Fender nut slot is absolutely shallow as anything. So it's quite a small object by the time we finish with it. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to do a little bit more sanding with a little bit of leaning backwards to square it up for my liking. So if I keep it going in the plane of this block, it's a 9.5 inch radius, so it's sort of making it the right shape as I go. Almost there. There's a little tiny dimple where it's undercut sort of thing. It's just a fraction off too snug as well, so I'll just take a tiny bit more. Alrighty, so a little thing, hardly anything to it. There we go, lovely, beautiful fit. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to fit the grub screws to begin with. Now, to start with, I'm fitting these pointed grub screws, and I'm just going to poke them through about, well, 1/2 mil just to start with. So the idea is I want to get them into the nut, just sticking through far enough to stick out the other side, and then I gently place this in the slot again. Now I'm going to examine where things lie. I think this thing is slightly oversized, which they always are. The question is how much, where do you want to place the strings? And obviously we could do the same amount of overhang at either end. Can't really feel things properly here because of these darn strings. So we could go flush at this end, which feels about right, and the overhang at this end, which I think I'm going to call that the right place. So I just leave that there for a second. I don't want my string, oh God, these strings are behaving badly. Strings behaving badly. I don't really want to take them off, so I shall do something like this again. Right, what did we say? Flush, smooth and flush at the front end. Right, leave it there for a second, get me the hammer, and I'm going to use the pointed screw to mark where the grub screw is going to sit, and then we have a bit of removal off this end. So I can get my pencil, I don't know what you can see here, two little spots, one there and one there. See them? Yes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a couple of drill bits, preferably slightly, I was going to say stale, but that's not the right word, slightly blunter ones. And I'm going to use them, and with my finger I'm going to gently sort of drill down, in inverted commas, into the maple. Now I say drill because I'm just making a bit of a dent really, and I'll go for a slightly bigger one, and I'm just using a little bit of finger pressure on the top of the drill bit, as you can see, just to make a little crater. And this crater, its purpose is just to hold the feet of the nut. Now those are too long, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to wind these through using the little hex key. I'll get the hex key in properly. Wind them through to about where I want them to be, so that's hardly sticking out at all at the top. So here we go, all the way through, about a millimetre sticking out the top, like so. And then I'm going to get my cutters, flush cutters, and I'm going to chop off the excess and the sharp point of the grub screw, which then leaves us with that. Then what I'll try and do is we'll go back to the block. Now this might be a little harder to do, and I'm going to by hand try and sand these grub screw bases flat, and it's probably working. A little bit hard to hold on to them with fingertips at this point in time, and the reason I'm sanding them, trying to sand them flat, is I just want them to spread the load of the weight of the strings into the full size of the grub screw diameter, not just a sharp little point which would have the tendency to cut into the wood a bit more. So and if I don't like that, I can just put it on there and go like so. And the other side. And more overall. If I can even hold it anymore because it's got so small. Okay, so the idea is I've taken off a lot of the scratchy stuff, and now what I'm going to do is just pull the grub screws in just a fraction. Now we know, if we remember, we had a bit of overhang on the base side, if you remember. So I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to use the same block to reduce down the base side a bit, and using the vertical wall of this as a means to do it. It's quite a neat little thing. Whoops. And then that sort of goes a bit sharp, so if we think we're at the right size, we can round off the edges a bit. So I'll just put it in here, have a feel, flush to this side, sticking out a little bit that side still, so we can go back to here, and whilst keeping the curve the same on the bottom, we can take down hopefully a bit more length off the base side. So let's put you down, see this, there you go. So now I can just push that in there. Now at the moment it can move from side to side because there's nothing sticking out, as in the grub screws aren't engaged. But as soon as I get rid of this green tape, as soon as I bring this into play, get the Let's get the winder out. Right, what I'll do is I'll get the string down. Now that's now sitting right flat on the first fret, so we'll get a bit of not too much force. Just rest them gently on the first fret, and then what I'll do then is just slightly lift up the or dial in the grub screw a little bit. Flies. Warm weather has just made a bunch of flies emerge that have been sitting around all winter doing nothing, I think. Okay. That one, at this end, it's almost playable, but so what I'm going to do is, I think I'm flush here. I can feel it a little bit sticking out this end, but we'll hold fire with that for a minute. So I'll dial this in. Now these are going in, and in a second it will find it lifting the strings up. Remove that. So all the way into the nut and then pull up. So obviously I can't really tell just yet until I put some more force into it, or some more loading on the strings, and in we go. Okay. So what you do now, some of those things, is we'll just tune it up and take a quick look at it. Brilliant. There we have it. So that's the adjustable Tusq nut. I can feel a tiny little overhang here that I would no doubt like to file out. So the easiest way to do it is to literally file it out while it's in situ, just being careful not to hit anything. So you can see when the nut is in action, it has a gap, so it's lifted off the floor to operate. So we could take it off and do it a bit more. It might be worth doing that in a second. Very close. Yeah, we could probably do a tiny bit more off that bass end, but it's hardly any. So that's our very, very slight first fret action. Great, so let's do that last bit before we get into the next stage. So keep everything. Now, when you've got an adjustable nut, remember to undo or loosen the outside ones and work inwards from both sides, leaving the two in the middle under tension until last thing, because that way then the nut won't go flying off sideways. So this also, not only have we got it to the right height, this will also have located itself a little bit in the those little marks, what do you call them, you know, those things, the little divots that I made. So I'm just going to sand this back a little bit, because I think it's just about right. Yep. And I'll do a tiny bit of rounding off to make it, get rid of the sharp edge. Same with the front corner, and the same out here, which is always a little bit too sharp. It doesn't have to be, so just go away, fly, take that down. Right, so while I'm at it, and while this is off, I'm going to mark up the frets, ready for the fret leveling. And doing this, I can also sort of see fairly clearly now the condition of the wear, and it's been played a few years by the looks of it. So you know, I don't think I'll be doing so much fret leveling as to take away all of this wear, and the reason for that is I don't think it's a good trade-off to lose too much fret life in exchange. You can't see me right now, sorry about that, I'm just working my way down the neck. Yeah, trading out fret life for cosmetic damage, which really doesn't get in the way that much of playing. It's not so bad that it would actually stop the guitar playing. But so in the process of leveling, we aim for getting rid of the fret slap and getting the guitar low action choke free first, and then if we're lucky and that helps clear up the fret wear at the same time, then that's a bonus, and I try to look at it that way. So again, when you're restringing, put the D and the G on first to hold the nut down in place, and then the rest. So in a second we'll get this stretched a little bit up to pitch, and then proceed to level the frets very carefully and gently, knowing that we're starting with a fairly low frets to begin with. Right, where's me noisy thing? So let's zoom out a minute because this is not very good view. Doink. I think you can see over there. Right. Let's first of all just do a little bit of a stretch to get everything seated again. Boing, boing. So let's just check a couple of other things before we do leveling. Let's see what the relief is on this neck, and it's practically none, which is something that Jonathan's guitars have all had in common. Nil relief. So we want a bit more than nil. Okay, what are we looking at? Made in Mexico. Never tell which of the things this likes. I'll actually get a reach into there properly. Thank you. There's one of them. One of the things about changing or adjusting the truss rod is it's an absolute pain when you can't access, when the strings are in the way and you can't clearly access the adjuster to find out which is the right one. So I think that one, without being able to see your way in, you don't know whether you're all the way in or not. I don't actually know what I'm looking at here. This varies. So I can't get in with there because I can't reach it with this stupid handle. That's a long thing. remember if the Mexico one is an imperial one or not. Probably is. And I've got one somewhere for it, but I can never remember which of them it is. I don't think it's this one, it's too small. No. Okay, where's the Mexico? Could be a long delay when I go hunting down the Mexico truss rod. It's not that one, is it? That wouldn't be. No, that's a 5. That's a 5. I thought it was one of these that I'd put a marker on, but it doesn't appear to be that one. Right, I guess I'll put a pause on while I go search for it. See you in a minute. One of those absolutely bizarre things that it's not that odd, unusual a thing. Hex key, it's a 5mm one, but for some reason nothing I had would fit, but that one does. Weird. Anyway, I've just slacked it off a fraction. I'm just going to tighten up the strings again, and we'll slack it again if necessary. A little bit, tiny bit of relief. I'll get a tiny bit more. That was mad, having to search for something and then find out you've already got it. The problem is, there's not enough room to get the bleeding hex key in and then get it out. Okay, a bit more. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the settings down here. Get the sort of playing action we want at both ends. So I want 1.5mm over on this side, which is where that is. That one's a bit low, the next one. 1.5, just about below. Right. Beautifully in tune. Fine. Okay. We'll get on the way. All right. So, having finally made the adjustment, a little bit of adjustment to the truss rod to dial in a fraction more relief than we originally had. It was very flat, so we want a bit of relief in there, not to be completely flat. So now we're going to get into the leveling. I've got one here, 5mm Mexico Strat written on it. How annoying. But it's the right one too. Yep, it is. It's also the one I used to adjust this truss rod. I knew there was one somewhere, but anyway, I found another one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to calibrate this leveling rod to match the curve on the neck, which it already is from guitar yesterday. And I'm going to space out the strings, push the E string out of the way, and with my fairly new 400 grit, I'm going to gently allow gravity to do its work as I gently level the what they call the E track, which is where the E string sits. So stopping for a moment, I just want to make sure, I might want to dial these pickups in a little bit so they're not up close to the strings at this point. Interesting thing about pickups, people often say, what height do you set your pickups at? And the rule of thumb, or the word on the street, says that the further away from the strings your pickups are, the less output they're creating, or the less output you'll get from them. But the more tonal dynamics you'll get. And the opposite is supposedly true. The closer they are, the more output you'll get, the louder they'll be, but the less tonal dynamics. So the first thing I want to do is obviously play all of those notes and make sure they play. And what I can see on this is that right there, it's playing okay. And I'm going to do the tiniest bit more on the E track to see if it'll get me anywhere near to cleaning up those wear grooves. But to be honest, I don't really want to spend too much time chasing those. As I said, it's not a great trade-off. So I think that will do on the E. You can see it makes it kind of makes the dust, kicks up the dust, so you can really see where it's been cutting the fret. Now what I'm seeing is the neck is actually pretty straight, which is amazing. Or the curve is pretty straight, I should say. It's not a bumpy neck, and it's not got hills, not got much in the way of hills and dales, which I think is great. So that's cleaned up some of the wear there. I think we're going to get stuck with a bit of wear in the second fret there on the B track, and a few more actually. It'd be very difficult. Again, we can chase those out, but we don't want to trade out too much fret metal. So the G track is always the critical one, because it's the one where any unevenness in the frets tends to get in the way of the E string bending its way across. So yeah, this is where you tend to, it's make or break for clearing those big bends out. So hopefully we will clear out, we'll level the G track now. On a maple board like this, it always looks worse than it is. You see the dust building up, you could panic yourself a fair bit. So hoping that this will all free up the bends right at the top here. Now there's a low fret here and a low fret there, but it's not so bad. So right now let's bend. Not bad. We're getting quite big bends out of that. So now we're going on to the D. Now as we get to the D, it's going to be less about individual single uneven frets, because we've already decided that the frets are pretty good generally, and the neck itself hasn't got a huge range of hills and valleys, which is again quite good. Can't get this string out of the way. Stay out of the way, please. No. No. Not much good. Maybe that'll work. Yeah, so we're just now, my aim now is to clear up the what I call fret slap, which is where there's just not quite enough room for the lower, usually the fatter strings, the wound string, to spin, and it can usually be just eased up by using this banana with the curve nicely built into it. It should just create the space for the string to move. Again, like I say, it does look drastic with the dust, but it's a very tiny bit there on 12th, but not enough to worry about. So now I'm going to calibrate again for the A, and then this is going to be, these are the more challenging ones, the A and the E. So again, very interesting that the neck profile isn't changing on this either. So the radius, the frets are even all the way across, and I'm not having to change the relief curve as I go across either. So that's pretty good. So at this point, I'm hoping that the curve of the very slight curve of banana, as I call it, is currently just imposing itself very gently onto the underlying frets and just eking out a little bit of extra space for the strings to spin in, so that when we go up fretting them, that's pretty good. There's a tiny bit more up here on the 12th, which you can tackle. You can see it's quite a lot of dust building up there. So we'll just go up to the 12th fret here and kind of run a bit over the top of that. Okay, fingers are getting very filthy, and then we're going to do the low E, and the same applies now. I just want this to ease up that fret slap we heard in the first instance. So I think there's going to be a little small amount of grooves left in this, unless we're so close that we can just chase them away for a little tiny bit more fret wire or fret material change and exchange for, we shall see. Tiny bit more up there. You can see tackling the top strings around the 12th fret is where it needs that extra bit of attention. Just going to work that a fraction more, like so, and then call it quits. So you can see how it's a great picture. Always looks terrible on a thingy neck, maple neck, but I can tell you that actually that isn't really that much hard work done on it. Now I can see, as I said, there are some areas here where we've still got the little dents, but I think they're very minor, and I'm not gonna do anything to them. I think that's as much as I want to do, and mainly because they're not that tall frets to begin with. They weren't anyway. They're quite vintage style, but I'm not going to spend any more fret metal on a cosmetic issue really. Okay, so these strings now have had their day. I think what I'll do is off camera in a minute, I think I'll take the tuners off, I'll take the bridge off and give everything a clean. A Strat bridge like this that's been on a long time could do with a little cleanup, because you know it's a nice unit and it deserves to be a bit shinier. And also taking the tuners off is the best way to get an overall clean of the headstock, and it doesn't really take that long, especially with these Fender tuners, which are fairly easy on, easy off. Okay, so I'll just do that off camera. But what I'll do just before that, and then obviously I'll clean up some of the dust. Let's take the nut out. Let's cut these strings, take them to the bin. I wonder if this is going to be a nice sunny day again tomorrow. It would be good. Right, so get rid of these and those. And once I've chopped these, then we'll do the recrowning bit. Filthy. Actually, it's probably better if I do the recrowning after I have taped up the neck, ready for polishing and sanding. So let me just do that while we're here. But the recrowning, oh well, we've got no choice. If this pulls up the finish, then we're in trouble. I just hope it doesn't. Can't really control it much more than that. I can perhaps avoid wrapping it around the back, which hopefully minimises the amount that it's gripping onto, because we can still work with it like that. But the problem I found is if it is one of those Fender necks where they had the problem with the adhesion of the finish, then you don't really have a choice about it. It's just going to do what it's going to do, and you just have to live with it. And if you do, you know, if it does come off, then at the worst, what you have to do is refinish the neck, which funnily enough isn't. Now I've got a high volume, low pressure sprayer and various things to spray on it. It isn't actually the worst thing in the world to do, and you get a nice refinished neck. Obviously you have to retain the original logo and stuff, but it just is, you can't predict it. That's the problem. It's once in a while, and I have a feeling that it's, in both cases, it was a USA Fender. I don't think it was a Mexican, and I'm sort of saying that with very hopeful tone, because I actually don't know, but I think it was. So as a result, I'm sort of confident that it's not going to do it. But having had it happen twice, now when I see the word Fender and I see maple together, I sort of panic slightly. But hey, there's no easy way after you've done a fret leveling to polish frets out thoroughly without doing this process, because you could try and use a fret polishing strip if you let's say you knew that the finish was hanging on, barely hanging on. You could try and use a fret polishing strip, but they're really, either you take forever to go through every single gauge of paper on each single fret, and all the micro mesh sets as well. You'd be there a very long time trying to polish the lot out. So the alternative is you kind of use the fret protector strip and some fret rubbers, which in my experience don't get rid of some of the 150 grit of the recrowning file. So, and that tends to leave you with scratchy frets in the end, which you can do with that. So anyway, I'm just for nervousness sake, I'm not wrapping the masking tape all the way around the frets at the moment. I'm just going to sort of leave them sticking out. So I did this a year or so ago. I was doing a Gordon Smith SG, and I went round and do what I normally do, which is tack those on the back. And when I came to remove them, it just pulled great glassy flakes of material off the back. It just came away. And there was nothing I could do about it except refinish the neck, which is what I did. But when you realise it's a manufacturer's issue, part of you really feels like you could do without that. Thank you very much. But it's just one of those things. It's not really that easy to predict. So I'm just going to cover up everything here, and then we'll do the crowning, and then I'll go off camera and do the sanding and polishing out. Now when I'm finished, you may probably will struggle to see the original wear down here, because a combination of a bit of leveling and some sanding out actually seems to very often makes it appear to have completely cleaned it up and made it go away. So it's actually quite effective, even if I know we haven't got rid of it all. And sometimes the final sanding part as well just smooths that very last bit out of the way, and you wouldn't really know it had been dented or grooved in any way. So I get part of the thing is to know when to stop with that when you're fret leveling, because there's a bit, there's a part of the wear that will come out in the sanding process. You don't just have to do it in the leveling process. So kind of usually guess it about right. So what I'm going to do is put a bit of green tape over what I'm hoping is it's all low tack masking tape, and then protect off a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of this, a bit of that. Right, that will be ready for sanding and polishing the frets. But in the meantime, let's do a bit of fret recrowning using this. But to do that, I will first of all mark up all the frets, and I can feel the wear at the top of these still, so it isn't going to get rid of it all. But like I said, not prepared to kill the fret life, just so that we know we've visually got rid of all those dents. We'll get rid of most of them. So I'm going to use the medium size of this thing here, this tool, and just going to basically get into it. Now this also is pretty good at showing you what damage is left on the frets. So I can see 3 little bullet holes here. In particular, the G has got the deepest hole, and it'll still be visible when we're done, but that's quite deep, and I'm not gonna turn this fret into the thickness of a fag paper, trying to get rid of something that isn't a showstopper as far as playing is concerned. I mean, I've said this before, but a good example of that is Brian May's Red Special. And if you ever look at the book on that and see the frets up close, he maintains that he's never refretted it in its nearly 60 or 50 plus years of playing. And it's hard to believe, but when you see the frets, you can see they are absolutely full of grooves all the way on every fret. So he evidently still plays that live, and it clearly isn't a showstopper for Brian May, and I don't think he's ignoring it. I don't think his undoubtedly superhuman talents and the guitar, I don't think they would overcome it if it was a major physical problem, you know, if the strings couldn't resonate, if they couldn't intonate properly because of these grooves and so on. So I've come to the conclusion that it's mostly aesthetic, and it's sort of confirmed by the fact Brian May's never done anything to clean the wear up on his old lady. I don't mean Anita. Right. There we have it. So not actually that much in the way of crowning to do. So despite the amount of dust, it wasn't a very costly fret level, which is good because, as I say, there's not that much material that you want to be chucking it away carelessly. So I'm going to stop the camera for a minute and make a phone call, or a call, Skype type of call, get me sanding stuff ready, and then come back when I'm ready to restring. Oh, I'll also, once I've done the sanding, I'll also do the clean up, which again I won't do on camera, so I'll see you in a minute. On a bit. All done. Well, frets leveled, polished, sanded, polished, tuners removed, headstock cleaned, body cleaned, jack socket tightened, so all good. So I'm currently, zooming out, something like that. I'm going to load up the strings. Oh, and I've taken the bridge off, cleaned that as well. So load up the strings and we'll be ready to load them onto the tuners, stretch them out, set the intonation, and that will be it. And that will be all of Jonathan's 5 guitars done. And of course, the thing I have to do next, which I should do tonight, I kind of immediately think, oh, I'll leave it till tomorrow. I should be taking some cardboard home from the very dusty spare room, the sawdust room, because I've got some cardboard I got from last year at the bike sellers in Plymouth, and I stored it here for when I ran out. So I've got 5 guitars to send next week, so I think I shall be needing the extra cardboard. So it'd be sensible to load it up now, or sooner or later. Maybe sooner rather than later, is what I mean. Okay, so let's look at there. Right, there's my view. So here we have things to put back on. String tray. We'll put the nut back on and then get ready to load up. Load up with rubber bullets. Something like that. Nut back in. We're good, we're good. Yeah, we're good. So we start with the D. Everything level. Start with the D. Start with all facing the right way. That would be good. Okay, D on. Pull it up through. Pull it up to the first fret. Pull it back to the second fret. Start winding. Hold it tight. Feed the tightly held string over the loose string. As it comes around, pull the loose string up and push the held string under the loose string for the second time round. And as it comes round, snip off the excess. Now the D, no, the G is what I'm saying, meant to be saying. Okay, pull through, first fret, back to second fret, hold tight, pull tight, held string over the loose string, it comes round, pull the loose string up, held string under the loose string, and tighten, slack, or excess chopped off. So that's going to be happily holding the adjustable nut in place. And the same applies then to all the other strings, the same way, even though the thin strings will wind on a bit further than the wound ones, so they'll go around more than once really. May have to sort of stop them while they're still quite slack to catch them in order to cut them short before they go round again. Well, everything worked out and the finish didn't fall off the neck or the sides of the neck, so thankfully that was all good. And I got every single bit of the string, the fret wear gone except for the tiniest little blip on the G track, about the third fret I think, but almost too small to notice. But it was a good guess because when I stopped sanding or stopped leveling, I think I had actually about 5 pieces of visible marks of wear. But the sanding process took care of that. So I sort of got used to knowing when to stop with the leveling and let the sanding part finish the job off, and it's quite effective. Okay. So everything good. Low E on. These are D'Addario strings because we only had, I think Jonathan brought 4 sets of strings down, 3 electrics and 3 electrics and 1 acoustic. So this is a D'Addario set. We had 1 Ernie Ball set on the vintage Icon Strat. I've got a string sticking in there. Okay, so sorry, just while you can't see, I'm just going to stretch the strings, sort of seat them on a little bit. And so I'm going to zoom out, I think. Am I? Yeah, probably. Go away. Stop zooming. Oh well, I think I'm zooming out. Going to tune up. Just looking at this, this has, I'm not going to adjust this because it's got a little extra room on the treble side, but I would rather it had that than on the bass side. Right, tune up again. While I'm there, just just going to put this over and put the cover back on. Strange. Okay, so the only thing I've got to do next is stretch the strings a bit and then check the intonation, and then we'll be done. And it's Sunday night, finished, home. What I'm going to do while I'm here, I'm also going to give the neck screws a little extra tweak. Good. Okay, so back to the stretching part. Thumb and forefinger, stretch away. Now I'm going to readjust the pickups in a minute, but as I say, it's a very subjective thing, so I'm going to pull them back up to 3 millimeters underneath the string at the point at which the string is being fretted at the end. So when the strings are all fretted on the last fret, I'll set it about 3 millimeters below that. But you can experiment, that's the thing to do. Right, one more stretching like this, although it could tolerate several more probably. The more you do, the more stable it's going to be. We're nearly there. It might be slightly high on the low E over the first fret, although actually looking at it from here it doesn't look like it. So. Look at that cap. Could be a fraction high. Where's my? That's always the one that goes AWOL. I'm sure I've got 1,000 of them knocking about, but the ones that I want. Right, let's get hold of this one. So I'm going to bring this down a tiny fraction. So now we just get the, I'm going to put the little tiny adjustable hex key, which is, the original one's gone somewhere, so it's always the way. So I'll stick this one on the scratch plate with my green frog tape, not duct tape. Then we'll get a lead and we will check the intonation on this beauty. And then we'll adjust the pickups after that. So intonation. So that looks a fraction sharp. So I will pull this back a little bit. In which case I'll pull everything back a little bit, I think. I'll pull the first two back to where I think they should be based on the first one. Perfect, and then we'll follow that pattern by setting the rest of them in line with that. So, you know, if I often ask people to believe me that the saddles go in a predictable grouping, 2 sets of 3 every time, and they never vary, assuming we're using, you know, big name manufacturer strings and the 3 of them are wound and 3 of them are plain. And so long as that's the case, they do not change. That's why I can get one of these right and pretty much position the remainder of them without testing it. Oh, last thing, pickups. So I'm going to go to about 3 mils, but the problem is these are staggered, so you're going to get a, you know, it's going to privilege the D on this set for some reason. So I'm going to follow the sort of, that's on the bridge one anyway, so I'm going to bring this one up a little bit more to about there, and then this one up. They're all staggered slightly different, but slightly differently, particularly the neck one. So I'm doing a bit more rebalancing. See. Okay, there we have it. The Mexican Strat, refreshed, cleaned up, leveled, almost all. You would be hard pushed to find any of the remaining wear. New adjustable Tusq nut on there, string tree, Tusq string tree, bridge cleaned, everything checked, jack tightened up, played through, tested, all good. And I'm just going to do a tiny tweak here, as this one appears to be fractionally higher. So this is kind of an eyeball version, which I quite like doing. There we have it. Thanks for watching. Oh, not that camera, that camera. See you again soon. Oh, and Jonathan, thank you for bringing me all of these lovely guitars to set up. It's been my privilege and honour to do it, and hope you enjoy them.